My stepdad's palm hit my shoulder so hard, I stumbled into the edge of the dining table, and the whole room went quiet, like someone had pulled the plug on Christmas itself. The china rattled. A fork clinked against a plate. My mother gasped, but she didn't move. My stepsister's mouth curled just slightly, like she'd been waiting for this moment the way kids wait for the tree lights to turn on. "You heard me," my stepdad said, standing over me with that tight, righteous expression he saved for church and punishments. "That seat belongs to my real daughter. Get out." For a second, I couldn't tell what hurt more, the shove or the word real, like the last 20 years of holidays and birthdays and forced smiles had been pretend. I looked around the table, searching for someone's eyes to meet mine. My uncle stared at his mashed potatoes. My cousin suddenly found the pattern on the tablecloth fascinating. My mom's hands hovered over the serving spoon, like she was frozen in the middle of a scene she didn't know how to finish. I felt heat climb my neck. My ears rang. I could hear my own breath, ragged and thin. And then, as if the universe wanted to make sure this humiliation branded itself into my memory forever, my stepdad reached across the table and lifted the small carved wooden ornament that sat beside my place, setting a tiny Santa figurine my late grandmother had given me when I was 12. He held it up like evidence. This, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, was supposed to be for Amanda. Amanda, my stepsister, the golden child. The one my stepdad had picked the second he married my mom, like he'd walked into our lives carrying a new script and decided I wasn't in it. My fingers tightened around the back of the chair. I didn't even realize I'd grabbed it. My hand shook. "Amanda has plenty," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "It's a Santa ornament." "It's not about the ornament," he snapped. "It's about respect. About knowing your place." Knowing your place. That phrase had followed me through half my life like a shadow. I heard it in the way he corrected me when I spoke at the dinner table, in the way he introduced me to people as Linda's daughter while Amanda was my girl, in the way he'd once told me when I was 16 and asking if I could borrow money for a class trip. "If you want something, you work for it. Amanda's different. She deserves support." I should have stopped coming. I'd said that 1,000 times in my head. But on Christmas, when you've spent decades pretending you still have a family, hope is a stubborn, stupid thing. I straightened slowly, my palms slick with sweat. I could feel everyone watching now, not with outrage, not with compassion, with that uncomfortable curiosity people get when they're witnessing something they know is wrong, but don't want to get involved in. My stepsister leaned back in her chair, her manicured fingers wrapped around a wine glass. She took a sip, like this was entertainment. I swallowed hard. "I'm leaving." My mother's eyes flashed, and for a heartbeat I thought she might stand up. I thought she might finally say, "That's enough." Instead, she whispered, "Please don't make a scene." The words hit me like a second shove. I picked up my purse. My hands were clumsy, my vision blurred at the edges. I heard someone murmur my name, maybe my aunt, but nobody stood. As I turned to go, my stepdad added, "And don't come back until you're ready to act like family." I paused in the doorway, my back to them, my shoulders tight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw every suppressed memory at him like dishes. I wanted just once to be the kind of woman who makes people regret crossing her. But I wasn't that woman, not yet. So I did the only thing I'd learned to do well. I walked away quietly. Outside, the cold slapped my face like it was trying to wake me up. Snow flurries drifted under the porch light, and I stood there for a moment staring at my car, like I'd forgotten how to use it. The air smelled like pine and chimney smoke. Somewhere down the street, someone's Christmas music played faintly. I got in the driver's seat and shut the door. The silence inside my car felt thick, like I was underwater. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My stomach rolled. I pressed my forehead against the leather and tried to breathe. This is ridiculous, I told myself. You're 43 years old. You have a mortgage and a job and a life. You are not a little girl being told to sit down and shut up. But my body didn't care about logic. My body remembered every time I'd swallowed my anger to keep peace. I started the engine and drove away from the warm glow of the house, away from the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, away from the family I kept trying to earn. The roads were slick, but mostly empty. Holiday lights blurred past like watercolors. My phone buzzed once in my purse, then again. I didn't look. I already knew who it would be, my mother trying to smooth it over, or Amanda texting something smug, or my stepdad sending a message that sounded like an order. I turned the radio on just to fill the space, but every station seemed hook up with cheerful carols, and I couldn't stomach it. I shut it off again. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath the whole drive. My little house sat dark and quiet, except for the wreath on my door and the soft glow of my neighbor's window across the street. I went inside, kicked off my boots, and stood in my living room, staring at the Christmas tree I'd put up out of habit. The lights blinked gently. The ornaments glittered. Everything looked normal, peaceful, and I felt like I was cracking down the middle. I made myself a cup of tea I didn't drink. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My mind kept replaying the shove the word real, the way my mother's lips formed, "Please don't make a scene." I thought about calling my best friend Denise. Denise would have driven over, no questions asked. Denise would have said words like boundaries and abuse, and "Why are you still doing this to yourself?" But it was Christmas night. Denise had her own family, her own kids, her own chaos. So I did what I always did. I swallowed it. At some point, I must have fallen asleep sitting upright, because I woke up with a sharp jerk, my neck stiff, and my mouth dry. The room was dark, except for the tree lights. My phone was on the coffee table screen, glowing with missed notifications. I checked the time, 2:17 a.m. My heart thumped strangely, not from a nightmare, but from something deeper, like my body was sounding an alarm I couldn't hear yet. I stood up, dizzy. The room tilted. I reached for the back of the couch to steady myself. The dizziness passed, then came back harder. My vision narrowed. My stomach lurched. I tried to take a breath, but it felt like air couldn't get all the way in. Panic, my mind supplied immediately. "You're having a panic attack. Great. Perfect." I forced myself toward the kitchen for water. My feet felt heavy, like I was walking through wet sand. I fumbled for a glass, spilled water on the counter, and suddenly my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't grip anything. Then the pain hit sharp and tight, right in the center of my chest, like a fist closing. Everything in me went cold. I leaned against the counter, gasping. For a second I saw my mother's face the way she looked when she was scared. I saw my stepdad's expression, stern and satisfied. I saw Amanda's smirk. And then something inside me whispered, "Not like this. Not after all of that. You are not dying on Christmas night alone." My knees buckled. The last thing I remember was my phone screen lighting up again, buzzing, 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 while my body slid to the floor. I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the low, steady beep of a monitor, my first confused thought being that I'd somehow ended up in the wrong house. The ceiling above me was too white, too bright, and when I tried to move, a dull ache spread across my chest like a warning. "Easy," a calm voice said. "You're in the ER. You had a stress-related episode. You're safe." ER. The word settled slowly like snow drifting to the ground. I turned my head and saw a nurse standing beside the bed, her expression practiced but kind. There was a blood pressure cuff wrapped around my arm and sticky pads on my chest. My throat felt raw, like I'd been crying or screaming, though I couldn't remember doing either. "What time is it?" I asked. "Just after 6, she said. "Christmas morning." Of course it was. I let my head fall back against the pillow. The irony was almost funny. I'd spent years swallowing hurt to keep holidays intact, and here I was, spending Christmas morning under fluorescent lights, my heart monitored by strangers who treated me with more care than my own family had the night before. The nurse explained what they thought had happened: acute stress, dehydration, a panic response that overwhelmed my body, not a heart attack, but close enough to scare anyone. "Your body's been under pressure for a long time," she said gently, adjusting the IV. "Sometimes it finds a way to force you to stop." Force you to stop. I stared at the wall while her words sank in. My body hadn't betrayed me. It had finally spoken up. When the nurse stepped away, the quiet returned. I shifted slightly and felt the phone in my hand warm from where I'd been clutching it. I hadn't even realized I was holding it. The screen lit up with notifications. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages stacked on top of each other. I didn't open them. Not yet. Instead, I closed my eyes and let memories surface, uninvited, familiar, heavy. I saw myself at 14, standing in the doorway of my bedroom, holding a report card with straight A's, waiting for my stepdad to look up. He'd glanced at it, nodded once, and said, "That's what you're supposed to do." Then I remembered Amanda at the same age coming home with a C in math. He'd laughed, ruffled her hair, told her school wasn't everything, and taken her out for ice cream. I remembered asking if I could go on a school trip senior year, something that would help my college applications. He'd said money was tight. 2 weeks later, Amanda got a brand new phone, just because. I remembered my mom always smoothing things over. "He doesn't mean it like that. You're just more independent. You know how he is." I had known how he was. That was the problem. By the time I went to college on scholarships and part-time jobs, I'd already learned the rules. Don't ask. Don't expect. Don't need. Amanda, meanwhile, stayed close to home. My stepdad paid her tuition, helped her buy her first car, bragged about her to anyone who would listen. She was his proof that he was a good father. I was just the background noise he tolerated because I came with my mother. Even after I built my own life, a stable job, a modest house, a reputation for being reliable, I kept showing up. Holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners. I told myself it was for my mom, that she needed me there. But if I was honest, it was for me. Some part of me still hoped that one day he'd look at me and see something worth protecting. That one day, my mother would choose me out loud. That hope had kept me coming back long after it made sense. The Christmas table was just the most public place it had ever been crushed. A doctor came in mid-morning, middle-aged, tired-looking, his tone practical. He confirmed what the nurse had said: recommended rest, therapy, less stress. And boundaries, he added, meeting my eyes. Whatever you're dealing with emotionally, your body can't keep absorbing it without consequences. Boundaries. Another word Denise loved. Another word I'd always nodded at and quietly ignored. I was discharged a few hours later with instructions to take it easy and follow up with my primary care doctor. The nurse helped me into my coat, wished me a gentle holiday, and told me to call if I needed anything. I walked out of the hospital into pale winter sunlight, feeling wrung out but oddly clear. Like something inside me had snapped, not broken, but shifted. At home, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and a glass of water. My phone sat on the coffee table face down, like an accusation. I slept again, deep and dreamless. When I woke up, it was afternoon. The room was quiet. My chest still ached faintly, but the panic was gone. In its place was a heavy, steady exhaustion. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up immediately. 47 missed calls. My breath caught, not from fear this time, but from something closer to disbelief. I scrolled. Mom, 18 calls. Stepdad, 9 calls. Amanda, 7 calls. Aunts, cousins, even my uncle, who hadn't looked up from his mashed potatoes, the rest. There were voicemails stacked like fallen dominoes. I didn't listen to them right away. Instead, I opened my messages. The first texts were confused. "Where did you go? Your mom is worried. Call us back." Then they shifted. "Something happened. Please answer. This is serious." Finally, panic bled through the words. "We didn't know you left like that. He didn't mean it. This is getting out of hand." Out of hand. I set the phone down slowly, my heart steady for once. I didn't know yet exactly what had happened after I walked out. But one thing was clear, the balance had changed. For the first time in my life, they were the ones reaching. And I was the one deciding whether to answer. I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes, the doctor's words echoing in my mind. "Your body forced you to stop." I finally understood what that meant. Ja suing hitrong sixes. I stared at the number on my screen, 47 missed calls, like it belonged to someone else's life. Part of me wanted to believe it was about my collapse, that maybe my mom had finally realized I wasn't being dramatic, that I wasn't too sensitive, that I wasn't making a scene. But another part of me, the part that had lived in this family for decades, knew better. They didn't call like that when I was hurting. They called when they were. My thumb hovered over the first voicemail. "Mom, of course." I pressed play. Her voice came through thin and shaking, like she was trying to keep her panic from spilling into the message. "Sweetheart, please call me back. Please. I don't know where you are. I didn't know you left like that. Something happened after you went outside and your stepdad." She swallowed hard. "Please, honey, just call me." I froze. Something happened after I left. I played the second voicemail. My Aunt Karen, the one who always brought a casserole, and pretended she didn't notice the tension. "Hey, it's Karen. Listen, I don't know what your mother told you, but you need to call her. Your stepdad he really did it this time. And there were people here," and her voice dropped. "It's bad. It's public. Public." My heart gave a small, tight thud. I sat up straighter, the blanket sliding off my shoulders. I clicked another voicemail. This time, it was my cousin Jason who'd stared at the tablecloth while I was being shoved. "Look, I'm sorry. I should have said something. We all should have. But after you left, he started in on your mom too." And then Jason exhaled sharply. Then Mrs. Hollis stood up. "You know, from church, and she said she wasn't staying for that. And she was loud, okay? Like loud, loud." Mrs. Hollis. I did know her. Everyone knew her. She was the kind of woman in her late 60s who baked for funerals and ran the church's holiday charity drive like a military operation. The kind of woman my stepdad never crossed, because her opinion traveled faster than weather. I sat there, phone in my hand, suddenly very aware of my own heartbeat, steady, controlled, not panicking, just listening. I opened a text from my mom that had come in overnight. "He yelled at the wrong person. Please call me." I frowned. The wrong person. I tapped Amanda's texts, next 7 of them in a row, each one a different shade of fury wrapped in fake concern. "This is so dramatic. Mom is hysterical because of you. Do you even know what you started? People are talking. Call her. You're ruining everything. Dad can't take this right now." Dad. Always Dad. I breathed out slowly through my nose, trying to piece it together. After I left, my stepdad did what he always did. When he felt challenged, he escalated. He couldn't stand the idea that I'd walked away without begging to be let back in. I clicked another voicemail from my uncle, the mashed potato man, because I couldn't help myself. His voice sounded uncomfortable, like someone trying to do the right thing after failing at it. "Hey, listen. I'm not good at this. But your stepdad, he said some things. And then he pushed your mom's hand away when she tried to calm him down, and he said, a pause, like he couldn't believe he was repeating it. He said you were a mistake that came with baggage." He said it loud enough that everyone heard. My throat tightened. I stared at the floor. A mistake that came with baggage. There it was. The sentence he'd probably rehearsed in his head for years, but usually kept behind his teeth because saying it out loud would make him look like what he was. The message continued. And then this is the part you need to know. Mrs. Hollis had her phone out. Not like recording, but she was calling someone. And your stepdad kept going. He didn't stop. He didn't even notice. I felt my stomach drop, not from fear, but from the weird, stunned realization that my stepdad's biggest enemy wasn't me. It was his own mouth. I played a voicemail from my mom's number again, later in the night after the first panicked one. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for hours. "He lost it," she whispered. "He told Mrs. Hollis to mind her business. He told her to sit down and shut up, like she was a child. And then, oh God, he said the charity drive was a joke, and that people only donate because they want attention." I blinked. That charity drive, Mrs. Hollis's pride and joy. The thing half the town posted about every December. My stepdad had basically insulted the entire community in one breath. My mom's voicemail kept going, words spilling out faster now. And she stood up. She looked at him and said, "If you can do this to a child you helped raise, I can only imagine what you do when no one's watching." And then she said she would not have a man like that on any committee at church. She said she'd be calling Pastor Ed and the board first thing in the morning. My mom inhaled shaky. Then she looked at Amanda and she said, "And shame on you for enjoying it." A sound escaped me, half laugh, half sob, but it got stuck in my chest. For years, I had waited for anyone to say the obvious out loud. And it hadn't been my mother. It had been Mrs. Hollis. I set the phone down and rubbed my palms over my face, slow and deliberate, like I was grounding myself. The house was quiet. The tree lights blinked. My tea from last night sat cold in the mug, forgotten. I wasn't proud. Not in the way people imagine revenge. No fireworks, no victory speech, no smug grin. What I felt was strange. Relief sharp as a cracked bell. Because if my stepdad could be exposed by simply being himself in front of the wrong witness, then maybe I hadn't been crazy all these years. Maybe I hadn't been too sensitive. Maybe I hadn't been misreading him. Maybe it really had been that bad. My phone buzzed again, another call from my mom. I watched it ring, the sound thin and persistent. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her. Not because I was playing games. Because my chest still ached. Because my hands still trembled if I held them too long in one place. Because I could still hear that word, real, echoing in my head, like a door slamming. I thought about what the doctor said: boundaries. I thought about how for the first time I had a choice that didn't involve begging for love. I flipped my phone over face down and stood up slowly. I walked to the kitchen, poured a fresh glass of water, and drank it like it mattered. Then I went back to the living room and sat down again, this time with my feet planted on the floor, steady, grounded. Outside, a car passed on the street. Somewhere a dog barked. Ordinary sounds. Real life. The world didn't end because I was pushed away from a Christmas table. But something had ended. The old version of me, the one who absorbed everything quietly and called it peace, was slipping away. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. And in the silence that followed, I realized something that made my throat tighten all over again. They had spent years teaching me I had no place at their table. Now suddenly, they were terrified of what would happen without me in their story. By late afternoon, the light outside my windows had that washed-out winter look, gray sky, bare branches, the whole world like it was holding its breath. My phone had gone quiet for maybe 20 minutes, and then it started again. Buzz! 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 I picked it up and watched my mother's name fill the screen. I let it ring out. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with something harder to name. Guilt, maybe. Or habit. the old reflex to fix things before they got worse. But worse had already happened. Worse had been happening for years. The call stopped. A second later, a text came through from my Aunt Karen. "Please, call your mom. Pastor Ed knows. People are calling the church." I stared at the words. Pastor Ed knows. I wasn't a regular churchgoer anymore, but I'd grown up in that World Christmas Eve services potlucks in the fellowship hall, Mom singing in the choir. My stepdad liked church because it made him look like a good man. He wasn't the kind to confess. He was the kind to perform. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I ignored it. Another voicemail appeared. I pressed play before I could talk myself out of it. A woman's voice, tight, brisk, older. "This is Hollis. Martha Hollis." She said it like I should already know the weight of her name. "I'm calling because your mother is beside herself, and nobody seems capable of telling the truth without making it sound like a misunderstanding." My throat went dry. "I want you to hear it plain," she continued. "What happened at that table was wrong. That man put his hands on you in anger in front of witnesses. He spoke about you like you were less than human. Then he turned around and insulted the church, the charity drive, and half the people in that room. And he did it with pride." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice softened just a little. "I'm not calling to drag you back into it. I'm calling because women like your mother will carry shame forever if someone doesn't steady them. And women like you will carry pain forever if you keep pretending it's normal." My eyes stung hot and sudden. "There are consequences coming," she said. "Not because you asked for them, because he earned them. I've already spoken to Pastor Ed, and I have no intention of letting this get smoothed over. But you." Another pause. "You should decide what you need, not what they demand." The voicemail ended. My fingers stayed wrapped around the phone like it might keep me from drifting apart. For a long minute I didn't move. All I could hear was the faint hum of my refrigerator and my own breathing. Then another text came, in this one from my cousin Jason. "It's on Facebook. Not your name, but everyone knows. Mrs. Hollis posted about a man humiliating a child at Christmas, and people are commenting like crazy." My stomach dropped. Facebook, of course. Small-town social justice ran on casseroles and comment sections. I opened the Facebook app with a kind of dread, then hesitated. I didn't want to see my life turned into a moral lesson for strangers. I didn't want to read people debating whether I should have been more respectful. I didn't want to see my stepdad's name dragged through the mud, not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because I knew exactly how ugly public shame could get. I closed the app again without looking. My phone rang Amanda. I exhaled slowly and let it ring out. A second later, her voicemail popped up. I didn't want to, but I listened anyway. "Are you kidding me?" Amanda snapped, her voice sharp like broken glass. "Do you have any idea what you've done? People are messaging me. People from church. People from Dad's work. He's getting calls. She made a frustrated sound. "You always do this. You play the victim and then act like you're innocent when things blow up." I felt my jaw clench. "You left like some martyr," she went on. "And now Mom's crying and Dad's furious and the church ladies are acting like he's a monster. Mrs. Hollis is telling everyone he shoved you, like you didn't provoke him." I stared at my Christmas tree. The lights blinked peacefully, like they didn't know what was happening. Amanda's voice shifted, less anger, more fear. "Dad can't handle this right now. He has contracts lined up after New Year's. People are already saying they won't hire him. You need to call Mom and tell her it was a misunderstanding. You need to fix this." Fix this. My throat tightened again, but this time it wasn't sadness. It was clarity. They weren't calling because they were sorry. They were calling because the story had escaped their control. Another call came, my mother again. I stared at it until it stopped. My phone immediately buzzed with another text, this one from my aunt. He got removed from the church committee. Pastor Ed told him not to come tomorrow. I sat back, stunned. My stepdad loved being on committees, loved being asked to lead, loved looking like the man who held everything together. If Pastor Ed had told him not to come, it meant the church board had already decided he was a liability. And I hadn't done anything. I hadn't posted. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't even told Denise yet. The consequences were unfolding without me lifting a finger, like dominoes falling because someone finally bumped the table. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Denise. "Call me. Are you okay? Your mom just left me a voicemail crying her eyes out." I stared at Denise's name and felt something in my chest loosen. Denise wasn't part of the family machine. She was my real life, my chosen family. The person who'd seen me come home from holidays with that "I'm fine" smile and knew it was a lie. I called her before I could change my mind. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "At home," I said. My voice sounded scratchy. Thank God. I could hear background noise, kids maybe, or a TV. "Your mom called me. She said you had to go to the hospital. Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to ruin your Christmas," I said automatically. There was a beat of silence on the line, and then Denise said very gently, "Baby, your Christmas was already ruined. Stop protecting everybody else from the consequences of their own behavior." My throat tightened. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "I'm not trying to punish anyone," I whispered. "I know," Denise said. "That's what's wild about this. You didn't punish them. You just stopped taking it." I closed my eyes. "They want me to fix it." "Fix what?" Denise's voice sharpened. "The fact that he shoved you. The fact that your mom sat there and let it happen. The fact that your stepsister enjoyed it. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern." I swallowed hard. "It's getting public. People are posting." "Good," Denise said, and there was no cruelty in it, just plain truth. "Let it be public. Let someone else carry it for once. You've been carrying it alone for years." I leaned back against the couch and stared up at my ceiling. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars passed. A neighbor's porch light clicked on. Life went on. Inside, my phone buzzed again, impatient, demanding, begging. But for the first time, I didn't feel pulled in every direction. I felt still. And in that stillness, I understood the real power shift. They could call me 47 times. They could cry. They could rage. They could panic. But they could not drag me back into the role of the quiet, grateful stepchild who smoothed things over so they could keep pretending. Not anymore. By the third day after Christmas, the calls slowed down. Not because things were resolved, but because they'd moved into a new phase. Needing me. I was standing at my kitchen sink washing a single mug when the knock came. Soft, careful, the kind of knock that doesn't assume it has the right to be answered. I knew who it was before I even dried my hands. My mother stood on my porch with her coat still buttoned up, purse clutched tight against her side like a shield. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled back too tightly the way she used to wear it when she was nervous and trying to look put together anyway. For a moment we just looked at each other through the glass. I opened the door. "Hi," she said, her voice small. "Hi," I replied. She stepped inside, like she was entering someone else's house, which I realized she was. She glanced around, taking in my modest living room, the Christmas tree still lit in the corner, the throw blanket on the couch. "It's nice," she said. "Cozy." "Do you want some tea?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "Yes, that would be good." I put the kettle on and waited. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't rush to reassure her. I didn't apologize. She stood there, twisting her wedding ring around her finger, the silence stretching until it felt intentional. "I didn't know," she said finally. "I mean, I knew things weren't perfect, but I didn't know it was like that." I turned to face her, leaning back against the counter. You were there. She flinched. I didn't know he would put his hands on you. You didn't stop him, I said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. Her shoulders sagged. I froze. So did everyone else, I said quietly. That doesn't make it hurt less. She nodded, eyes filling. I failed you. The words landed heavy between us. They were the first honest ones she'd said. I should have protected you, she continued. I should have said something years ago. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad. That you were strong. That you didn't need me the way Amanda did. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. I needed you, I said. I just learned not to show it. She pressed her lips together, nodding. I see that now. The kettle whistled. I poured the water, handed her a mug, and we sat at opposite ends of the couch, like two people negotiating unfamiliar territory. He's in trouble, she said after a moment. More than I realized. The church board asked him to step down permanently. Pastor Ed told him not to come back until he's addressed his behavior. His work. She hesitated. 2 contracts were canceled. I didn't respond. He's angry, she added. He says Mrs. Hollis had no right. That people are exaggerating. That you. She stopped herself. That this all spiraled because you left. I met her eyes. I left because he shoved me. She nodded again, faster this time. I know. She wrapped both hands around her mug, like she was trying to warm something deeper than her fingers. He needs you to say it was a misunderstanding, she said softly. Just something to calm things down. There it was. The ask. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with recognition. This was the moment everything had been training me for. The moment where I was supposed to step back into my role and smooth the mess so everyone else could breathe again. I set my mug down carefully. No, I said. The word hung there. Simple, unapologetic. Her face crumpled slightly. Honey. I'm not doing that anymore, I continued. I'm not lying so he can keep his reputation. I'm not shrinking so things can go back to the way they were. Her eyes filled with tears. But he's my husband. I know, I said gently. And I'm your daughter. She looked down at her hands. Amanda says you're enjoying this. That one stung, but not the way it used to. I'm not enjoying it, I said. I'm resting. There's a difference. She looked up at me, then really looked. You seem different. I am, I said. I have to be. She nodded slowly. She's furious, she said. Amanda. She says you've always been jealous. That you finally found a way to get attention. I let out a small, humorless breath. Of course she does. She doesn't understand why you won't just come over and talk it out, my mother said. She says families fight. Families don't shove, I replied. They don't decide who's real and who isn't. Silence settled between us again, but this time it wasn't brittle. It was thoughtful. I don't want to lose you, my mother said finally, her voice breaking. I reached for my mug again, grounding myself. Then you need to hear this, I said. I'm not cutting you off, but things are going to be different. She looked at me, searching. I won't come over if he's there, I said. I won't sit at a table where I'm disrespected. I won't pretend everything's fine for the sake of appearances. And I won't take messages from Amanda asking me to fix things for her father. She swallowed hard. That's a lot. It's necessary, I said. She nodded, tears spilling now. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I do, I said quietly. I've been doing it alone for years. She reached out, then tentative, and touched my arm. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't loud. But it was real. We sat there a while longer, talking in careful pieces. She didn't ask me to call him again. She didn't ask me to post anything or deny anything. When she stood to leave, she looked smaller somehow. Not weaker, just stripped of the illusions that had kept her steady. At the door, she paused. If he apologizes, she said, would you hear him out? I considered the question carefully. I would listen, I said. But that doesn't mean I go back. She nodded. That's fair. After she left, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing out slowly. My phone buzzed once Amanda again, but I didn't check it. I walked back into my living room, sat on the couch, and felt something settle into place. This wasn't revenge. This was self-respect. And it was long overdue. The next time my phone rang, it wasn't my mother. It was him. His name, Rick, lit up my screen like a warning flare. For a second, my body tried to do the old thing, tense brace, prepare to shrink. I could almost feel my shoulders pulling inward on instinct, like I was about to walk back into that dining room. I didn't answer right away. I watched it ring until it stopped. A voicemail appeared. I stared at it, thumb hovering, then pressed play. My stepdad's voice filled the room low, controlled the kind he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. Linda said you won't come over, he began. No hello. No how are you, so I'm calling. We need to talk. Need, not want. He cleared his throat. I'm not going to pretend I handled things perfectly. But you have to understand you disrespected me at my own table. You challenged me in front of my family. My family? He still said it like I wasn't included. And now, he continued, people are talking like I'm some kind of monster. The church board is acting like I'm a criminal. Mrs. Hollis is running her mouth. This has gotten out of hand. Out of hand like consequences were just a weather event. I'm willing to meet you halfway, he said, and I could hear him settling into what he probably thought was diplomacy. But you need to stop this. You need to tell people it's being blown out of proportion. Your mother's exhausted. Amanda's being harassed online. And I have work on the line. We can't have our name dragged like this. Our name. As if I'd ever been allowed to carry it. The message ended. I sat on my couch phone in my lap and let the silence do its work. A year ago, that voicemail would have turned my stomach into a knot. I would have called my mom, apologized for existing, offered to come over and talk, which would really mean sitting there while he lectured me and then calling it resolution. But something in me had shifted. Maybe it was the hospital. Maybe it was hearing Martha Hollis say it plain. Maybe it was the simple fact that I'd finally said no and the world hadn't collapsed. I didn't call him back. Not immediately. Instead, I texted my mother. If he wants to talk, it will be in a public place. No yelling, no blaming. If he can't do that, there's no conversation. She replied 5 minutes later. Okay, I'll set it up. Thank you for even considering it. The word thank you felt strange coming from her, like she didn't know it could be used on me. 2 days later, we met at a diner off the highway, one of those classic American places, with vinyl booths, laminated menus, and a waitress who called everyone Honder, neutral ground, bright lights, other people around, a place where nobody could turn the volume up without being seen. I arrived early and sat in the corner booth with my back to the wall. My hands were steady, but my stomach churned the way it always did before facing him. Some wiring in me still remembered being a kid in trouble. Denise texted me, "You don't owe him anything. Call me after." I read it twice, then slid my phone into my purse. Rick walked in with my mother and Amanda, like it was a business meeting. He wore his good jacket and a tight smile. My mother looked pale. Amanda looked furious, eyes glossy with that particular kind of rage that comes from losing control of the narrative. Rick spotted me and headed over with an air of ownership, like he was walking toward a problem he intended to solve. Good, he said, as he slid into the booth opposite me. My mother sat beside him. Amanda took the seat across from my mother, directly facing me, chin raised. Rick didn't wait for pleasantries. Let's be adults, he said. This has gone too far. I held his gaze. It went too far when you shoved me. His jaw tightened. I did not shove you. I moved you aside. Amanda let out a sharp laugh. Oh my God, here we go. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Rick. You put your hands on me in anger. In front of people. You told me I wasn't real family. That's what happened. Rick's nostrils flared. You embarrassed me. You challenged me at my table. My place setting embarrassed you, I asked. My voice stayed calm, and I could tell it bothered him more than if I'd raised it. He leaned forward. You don't get to come into my house and act entitled. Entitled? I almost smiled. The irony was so sharp it could have cut. My mother spoke softly like she was trying to prevent a storm. Rick. He held up a hand without looking at her. No. She needs to hear this. Then he turned back to me. You've always had a chip on your shoulder. Always. You think the world owes you something because your father left. That one landed old and familiar. He'd loved that story me as damaged goods him, as the man who took on my mother's baggage. My fingers curled around my coffee mug. Warm. Solid. Don't talk about my father, I said quietly. Rick scoffed. See there. That attitude. You can't take feedback. Amanda jumped in her voice, dripping with contempt. You love this. People finally feel sorry for you. You're making Mom miserable. My mother's shoulders sagged. She stared at the table. I took a slow breath. I looked at my mother, then back at Rick. This isn't about a table, I said. This is about a pattern. You've treated me like I'm optional for 20 years. You've talked to me like I'm an inconvenience. And Mom, my voice softened as I said it, you let it happen. My mother flinched like I'd touched a bruise. Rick's face hardened. I provided for this family. You provided for Amanda, I corrected, still calm. I provided for myself. That's not the same thing. Amanda's eyes flashed. You're obsessed. No, I said, I'm done. That word seemed to freeze the air for a second. Rick leaned back, studying me like I was a stranger. So what do you want? He asked, voice low. An apology money. You want me to grovel so you can feel powerful. I shook my head. I want the truth, and I want boundaries. He snorted. Boundaries. That therapy word you people love. I didn't react. If you want a relationship with me, you don't get to call me not real. You don't get to insult me. You don't get to touch me in anger. Ever. Rick's mouth tightened. And if I don't agree? Then there is no relationship, I said simply. My mother's breath hitched beside him. Amanda's eyes widened like she couldn't believe I'd say it out loud. Rick stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker behind his anger uncertainty, because he'd spent years counting on my silence, counting on my mother's fear, counting on Amanda's loyalty. This version of me didn't fit his script. The waitress came by and asked if we needed anything else. Rick forced a smile and said, No, we're fine. The moment she walked away, his face snapped back. You're willing to tear this family apart over one moment, he demanded. One moment, I repeated. My voice stayed even, but my eyes stung. Rick, it wasn't one moment. It was a lifetime of moments. Christmas was just the first time everyone saw it. He opened his mouth, but I kept going because I needed to say it once without being cut off. You care about your reputation, I said. I get that. But I'm not cleaning this up for you. The only thing I'll do is tell the truth if someone asks me. And if that truth damages your image, that's not my doing. Rick's hands clenched on the table. So you're threatening me? I'm not threatening you, I said. I'm describing reality. Silence fell. In it, my mother finally spoke not to me, but to him. Rick, she said, voice shaking, you did shove her. He whipped his head toward her, like he couldn't believe she'd betrayed him. My mother didn't look away. I saw it. I heard what you said, and I can't pretend anymore. Amanda made a strangled sound. Mom! My mother's eyes filled. Amanda, stop. I sat very still, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something like grief and relief tangled together. This was what I'd waited for and stopped expecting. Rick looked from my mother to me, and his face changed. His anger wasn't just anger anymore. It was panic, the kind that comes when control slips. He stood abruptly, booth squeaking, and tossed a few bills onto the table. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "I'm not going to be ganged up on." He stormed out of the diner, the bell over the door jingling cheerfully, as if it hadn't just witnessed a family fracture. Amanda shot to her feet. "I can't believe you," she hissed at me, then spun toward my mother. "I can't believe you." She followed him out, heels clicking like gunshots. And then it was just me and my mother in the booth, the air still vibrating with what had been said. My mother covered her face with her hands and sobbed quietly. I didn't reach for her right away. I let her cry. I let the moment be real. Because for once I wasn't the one pretending it didn't hurt. My mother cried into her hands for a long time, shoulders shaking the way mine used to shake in my car after family dinners. The waitress came by once and pretended not to notice, setting down a fresh stack of napkins like she'd done it 100 times before. When my mom finally looked up, her mascara had smudged under her eyes. She tried to wipe it away with a napkin and then gave up. "I don't know how we got here," she whispered. "I did, but I didn't say it like that." "We got here one small choice at a time," I said gently, "and we can get somewhere else the same way." She nodded, staring into her untouched coffee. "He's going to be furious." "I know." "And Amanda?" She swallowed. "She's my daughter." "I know," I said again, softer. "And so am I." My mother's mouth trembled. "I'm sorry," she said. And this time it wasn't a desperate apology to make the tension disappear. It sounded like someone waking up after a long sleep and realizing what they missed. "I can't go back to how it was," I told her. "Even if you want me to." She nodded slowly, like her body understood before her heart caught up. "What do you need from me?" she asked. It was such a simple question. It shouldn't have felt like a miracle, but it did. "I need you to stop asking me to carry the peace," I said. "I need you to stop making my pain the price of everyone else's comfort." She closed her eyes and inhaled shakily. "Okay. Okay," I repeated just to hear it again. We walked out of the diner together into the cold, and for once, she didn't hurry ahead of me to catch up to Rick. She stood beside me, uncertain but present, as if she'd finally realized I was a person and not a problem to manage. That didn't mean everything magically got better. The next few weeks were messy. Rick refused to speak to me. That part didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how hard he leaned into the idea that he was the victim. He told anyone who would listen that I was turning the family against him, that I was overreacting, that I was poisoned by outside influences. Outside influences, meaning Denise and therapy, and a doctor who said the word boundaries, like it was medicine. Amanda posted vague, dramatic things online about toxic siblings and ungrateful people who ruin holidays. She stopped calling me altogether, but she didn't stop trying to get my mother to pressure me. For the first time, though, my mother didn't deliver the messages. Instead, she started calling me and saying Amanda is upset, and then catching herself like she was about to add, "So fix it," and remembering that I wasn't doing that anymore. On my side, I did something I'd avoided for years. I got help. I found a therapist whose office smelled like peppermint tea and clean paper. I sat in a soft chair and told the story out loud. Christmas table shove, real daughter. Get out, hospital, missed calls. Diner. I expected to feel ashamed, like I was tattling. Instead, the therapist said, "That was emotional abuse." And the shove was physical aggression. Your body reacted exactly the way bodies react when they've been under threat for a long time. Threat. Abuse. Words I'd always reserved for other people's stories. Not mine. My therapist didn't tell me to hate my family. She didn't tell me to cut everyone off. She told me to get clear. "What do you want your life to feel like?" she asked me one day. I blinked at her. "Quiet," I said. "Safe. Like I'm not bracing all the time." Then she asked, "What choices would support that?" That question became my compass. I kept my boundary. I would see my mother without Rick present. I wouldn't go to their house. I wouldn't sit at a table where my place could be taken away, like a chair was a privilege. At first, my mom tried to split the difference. She'd suggest just a quick coffee with all of us. She'd say Rick was calmer now. She'd say Amanda missed me. I'd answer the same way every time no. Not angry, not dramatic, just no. It was like building a fence with the same plank over and over. Boring, necessary, strong. And slowly, painfully, my mother stopped testing it. She started coming to my house on Sundays with a grocery bag. She'd bring soup or muffins like I was a neighbor she wanted to be kind to. At first, we talked around the big things weatherwork movies she'd watched. Then, one afternoon, she looked down at her hands and said, "I think I've been afraid of him for a long time." The honesty made my throat tighten. Not of being hurt, she clarified quickly. Just afraid of upsetting him. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of what happens when he gets angry. I nodded. I know. She whispered, "I don't like the person I become when I'm trying to keep him calm." That was the beginning of her education, not a lecture from me, but a dawning inside her. She started reading about narcissistic dynamics and emotional manipulation. She started saying things like, "That's not okay," out loud. She started seeing how favoritism had shaped Amanda too, how being the golden child hadn't made Amanda happy, only entitled and terrified of losing her status. Rick, meanwhile, faced his own consequences. The church asked him to meet with Pastor Ed and a counselor. He refused at first. He said he didn't need some stranger telling him how to run his home. But work dried up. People stopped inviting him to gatherings. Men who used to slap him on the back and call him a good guy suddenly had excuses. One evening in early spring, months after Christmas, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Then a voicemail came in. It was Rick. His voice sounded different. Not softer exactly, but less certain, like he'd learned the world didn't revolve around his version of events. "I'm calling because your mother says you might be willing to hear me," he said. "I'm not asking to meet. I'm not trying to argue. A pause. "I've been thinking about what you said. About patterns." My fingers tightened around the phone. "I grew up in a house where men didn't apologize," he continued. "If you were wrong, you doubled down. You got louder. You made everyone else small, so you didn't have to feel small." He exhaled. "That's what I did to you." My chest ached in a slow, steady way. "I can't undo it," he said. "But I am sorry. For the things I said. For putting my hands on you. For making you feel like you weren't part of the family." The words were plain. No excuses. No but. "I don't expect forgiveness," he added. "I just wanted you to hear that." The message ended. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall for a long time. In movies, apologies feel like a magic key, say the right words, and the door opens. Real life isn't like that. Real apologies are not the end. They're the start of a long road that may or may not be walked. When my mother came over the next day, she didn't push me. She just asked, "Did you hear it?" "I did," I said. "What do you feel?" she asked, cautious. I thought about it honestly. "I feel sad," I admitted, relieved, "and still careful." She nodded. "That makes sense." And for the first time, my mother didn't demand a neat ending. She let my feelings be complicated. She let mine matter. That summer, Amanda reached out once. One short text. "I don't know how to talk about any of this, but I'm sorry." It wasn't warm. It wasn't detailed. It didn't erase anything. But it was a crack in the armor proof that even golden children can feel the emptiness of a love that depends on staying perfect. I didn't rush to rebuild with her. I texted back the truth. "Thank you. If you ever want a real relationship, it has to be honest and respectful. I'm not going back to the old roles." She didn't reply. Not then. And that was okay. Because the biggest reconciliation wasn't with Rick or Amanda. It was with myself. I stopped trying to earn a place at tables where I was treated like an extra chair. I stopped calling cruelty family. I stopped confusing endurance with love. The moral is simple, but it's hard to live. You can love people and still set boundaries that protect your soul. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to someone, it's what you finally stop allowing. If this story hit a nerve, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, if you've ever been pushed aside to make room for someone else, take a breath with me. You're not crazy, you're not weak, and you're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, real-life grounded quiet strength, hard-won dignity, please share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.